Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the fog-choked streets of Victorian London, where horse hooves echo on cobblestones, gas lamps hiss with a sleepy glow, and behind crooked wooden doors, lives unfold you rarely read about in history class. You stand beneath a leaning brick arch, wrapped in a threadbare shawl that does absolutely nothing to block the cold. The damp creeps up from the Thames, clinging to your boots, curling into your lungs. Somewhere nearby, a pub door swings open and shuts again. Someone sings badly. The rest is silence. You're here for work, not work they advertise in the newspapers. This kind of work starts with a knock, knuckles rapping gently on a side door, the kind that's easy to miss unless you already know it's there. You've heard rumors about money, warm food, maybe even safety. You're skeptical and freezing. So when that knock comes, you answer. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The woman who answers is not who you expect. She's older, dressed like a widow, with eyes like a ledger book, quick and full of tiny calculations. She doesn't ask your name, just steps aside and lets you in. The hallway smells of boiled cabbage and perfume. Wallpaper curls at the corners. The floor creaks in exactly 3 places as you follow her in. This isn't a grand house, not one of the high-end establishments you've heard about near Regent Street, where gentlemen bring gold coins and letters of recommendation. This is Lambeth, a bit of a wobble in the city's moral scaffolding, but you're grateful it's not Whitechapel, where you've heard the brothels double as hiding places for pickpockets and things even less charming. She leads you to a parlor lit by 3 gas lamps and a hearth that crackles with coal. A cat is curled in the corner, striped, half asleep, and for some reason, very offended by your presence. You're handed a cup of weak tea and asked a few things. How old are you? Any children? Can you read? Can you smile? You answer with nods. No one asks about your past. Not the factory job. Not the seamstress work. Not the man who promised you marriage, then vanished like a stage magician. None of that matters here. You're a blank slate, and blank slates are easy to write on. There's another girl in the room, curled in a chair, legs tucked beneath her like a cat, her hair in tight ringlets that probably took hours to achieve. She looks at you, shrugs, then goes back to darning a stocking. You'll learn later her name is Clara. She has 6 brothers, all useless, and a laugh like spilled silver coins. The woman, Madam Wright, you'll come to call her, explains the rules in clipped tones. You'll rent a room. Half your earnings go to her. Meals are shared: porridge in the morning, stew in the evening, something sweet only on payday. No men in your room unless she approves. No debts. No drunkenness. No running off without notice. Historians still argue whether brothels like this were exploitative dungeons or oddly structured safe havens. The truth is, it varies by door. Behind this one, the rules are stiff, but the bed has real sheets. That counts for more than you'd think. She shows you to your room. It's up 2 flights of narrow stairs beside the laundry. There's a small window that opens halfway before sticking. A wash basin, a tin mirror, a candle with a cracked ceramic holder. On the wall, someone's etched their initials into the plaster. MG 1871. You trace it with your finger. You sit on the bed. It creaks ominously, but holds. You're too tired to be afraid, too poor to be proud. The truth of it settles on your shoulders like the damp outside. This is your job now, and you'll need to learn it fast. Outside, a horse-drawn cart rattles past. Somewhere, a dog barks once, and then thinks better of it. You look at the window and see only gaslight flickers. And in your pocket, 3 coins, a ribbon, and a safety pin. Not exactly armor, but it'll have to do. The morning after doesn't begin with sunlight. It starts with a cough, not yours, but Clara's, from the next room over. It's dry and persistent, like an old hinge that keeps swinging. You blink at the ceiling, where a water stain has begun to resemble Queen Victoria. If you squint and forgive her the mustache, you rise slowly. The bedsheets are stiff from age and washing soda. Your feet find the floorboards, which are somehow colder than the air. The chamber pot in the corner says hello. You pretend not to hear it. Downstairs, the kitchen is already busy. A girl named Bessie is stirring porridge in a dented pot, and you're not sure if she's 17 or 37. Victorian street life will do that to a face. She greets you with a look that says, "Don't expect me to smile before tea." Fair enough. The table is cluttered with chipped bowls and a jar of something that used to be jam. A rat, the bold kind, eyed you from a corner and skitters off, smug. You eat quietly. The porridge is gluey, but it's warm, and your stomach thanks you by not complaining too loudly. As the other girls drift in, it becomes clear that everyone has a role. Clara is the seasoned one, the one who knows when to speak, when to vanish. Bessie is the fixer, always with thread and pins in her apron. Then there's Mary, who says very little but has perfect posture and always smells faintly of cinnamon. You're the new one. You're still wearing the wrong shoes. Getting dressed is a ritual, not a glamorous one, more like battle preparation. If the battle is between your corset and your lungs. Bessie laces you in, muttering about rib cages not being optional, and pulls tight. Breathing becomes a part-time job. You slip into a faded blue dress that's seen better decades, and a pair of stockings with precisely 2 holes. One toe pokes out like it's waving for help. Then comes the powder, white lead, mostly applied with a soft puff to even out your skin tone, or at least distract from it. Historians still argue whether these cosmetics were applied for appeal or simply out of desperate conformity. All you know is it makes your face feel like chalkboard. You dab rouge on your cheeks, smear a bit of lamp black along your lashes, and try to ignore the way it stings. The perfume is a mix of rose water and something that smells like old sherry. You dab it behind your ears and under your wrists like Clara showed you. Now comes the wig. Yours is still being styled by Bessie, who has an unfortunate fondness for curls that resemble question marks. She says it gives you bounce. You silently hope she doesn't mean that literally. Madame Wright appears at the doorway like a storm in lace. She surveys the room with narrowed eyes, straightens a hem with surprising gentleness, and instructs you to smile with your teeth, but only slightly. Men like a mystery, she says. Too much gum, and they think you're simple. You practice your half smile in the cracked mirror. You look less like a mystery and more like someone who's just remembered they left the oven on. It'll do. There's a knock at the front door. Everyone goes still, like actors before a cue. Clara peeks through the curtain. First of the night, she says with a smirk. Brace yourself. And just like that, it begins. The parlor is dim. The lamps turned low to hide what daylight made obvious. You sit on the edge of the chaise lounge, legs crossed, hands folded. The man who enters is older, flushed, and carries the scent of pipe smoke and money handled too often. He introduces himself as Mr. Barrett and offers no handshake. Just a slow nod and a glance that catalogs you like a horse at market. He asks if you like poetry. You say yes. He recites something by Tennyson, but forgets most of it midway, and ends with a cough and a self-satisfied smile. You laugh gently as instructed. It's not the worst conversation you've ever had, but it's not winning any medals either. Madame Wright watches from the doorway, her expression unreadable. There's a ledger in her hand. There is always a ledger. Later, you'll learn the codes she uses. G for generous, D for difficult, L for lingerer. Mr. Barrett earns a D and a sideways glance. You add him to the mental list of clients who want attention, not affection. As the lamps burn low and footsteps creak upstairs, you sit quietly in the parlor, practicing your smile between sips of lukewarm tea. Outside, the gaslights flicker, and the city rumbles like it's shifting in its sleep. You think of your old job, folding shirts in a laundry room. Your fingers always smelled of soap and starch, and your back ached by noon. Here, the aches are different, but at least the tea is free. A bell chimes softly down the hallway. Madame Wright raises a brow. That one's yours. You nod, stand, and smooth the dress. One shoe is looser than the other. You consider it lucky. By the time you've seen your third client, your feet ache like they've marched to Dover and back. The corset pinches just beneath your ribs, and the wig is itching in ways no polite person would scratch in public. You're learning to walk in a way that's half float, half glide, part survival tactic, part stagecraft. The parlor quiets between visits. Clara's humming something that sounds like a lullaby wrapped in sarcasm. Bessie is carefully mending a glove with the focus of a surgeon. Mary sits perfectly still, reading a folded letter so faded the ink looks like ghost handwriting. You try not to stare or ask questions, especially about letters. In the front hall, a grandfather clock ticks like a slow accusation. You're told never to touch it. Something about bad luck. Historians still argue whether brothel superstitions served as coping mechanisms or simply as ways to impose order on chaos. Either way, you learn fast. Don't touch the clock. Don't sit in Madame Wright's chair. Don't whistle after dark. Whistling, according to Clara, calls up sailors, spirits, and solicitors, all of whom are terrible tippers. The parlor has its own rules. One girl sits nearest the door, the others arranged for optimal effect. Everyone knows how to angle their chin just so, how to speak in low tones that make secrets sound sweeter. Even laughter is calculated, a light trill for the gentleman who thinks he's charming, a warm chuckle for the nervous ones who spill coins like confessions. Your feet tap lightly against the carpet as you practice. Smile with the eyes, watch the hands, repeat. In the corner, a large mirror tilts forward slightly, like it's in on the joke. You catch your reflection there more often than you mean to. Each time, it surprises you. You look older, not in years exactly, just seasoned, like you've lived through an entire novel in the last 48 hours. There's a soft knock on the back door, a delivery. The kitchen boy brings a crate of apples and 2 letters tied with twine. One is for Madame Wright, the other, oddly, is addressed to no one. She tucks it under her shawl without comment. You wonder briefly who it's meant for. Then you remember, this is not a place that asks questions aloud. By evening, the gaslight glows yellow gold on every surface. The street outside smells of coal smoke, horse manure, and the faintest hint of roasted chestnuts. You long for something sweet, not sugary, just kind. A gentleman caller arrives who insists on dancing. He hums the waltz himself, off-key, and swings you clumsily around the carpet as if the rug were a grand ballroom. Clara snickers behind a handkerchief. You nearly laugh yourself. The man leaves you a silver shilling and a daffodil he claims to have picked himself. You doubt it. After he leaves, you tuck the flower behind a crack in the wall near your bed. It droops within an hour, but still smells faintly of spring. It reminds you of Sundays back home, or the idea of home, at least. Madame Wright calls everyone to the drawing room just after 10. She reads out tomorrow's appointments in a voice like dry paper, pausing only to sip her tea or arch a brow when someone forgets to curtsy. You're assigned a returning customer named Mr. Galloway. Clara makes a face like she's tasted something sour. You'll be fine, she says afterward. Just don't let him recite poetry. He gets weepy. You nod and pretend not to feel nervous. The girls begin drifting toward their rooms, yawning, muttering, smoothing their hair in the hallway mirror. As you climb the narrow stairs, you pause at the landing to look out the small window. The moon is round and quiet. London stretches away in soft glows and chimney smoke. You think about the clock, the flower, the letter without a name. Something about it all feels like a riddle you'll never solve, but must keep reciting. Night after night, your room is as you left it. Dim, still, filled with the faint scent of your borrowed perfume. You sit on the edge of the bed and begin unlacing your boots. One toe aches from the tight seam. The candle sputters as you lean forward to blow it out, but before you do, you whisper something to yourself. Not a prayer exactly, just a word, or maybe a name. It's the last thing in your head before the flame disappears, and the night folds around you like a heavy, borrowed quilt. Morning comes not with songbirds, but with Clara knocking on your door, holding your wig like it's a sick ferret. "Come on," she mutters. "We've got inspection." You rub your eyes, try to remember what day it is, and realize that in this house, days don't count so much as evenings do. Still, you rise. The candle stub by your bed has melted into a soft spiral, like it gave up waiting for you. Downstairs, there's tension in the air, the kind that makes teacups clink louder, and even Bessie speak in whispers. It's not the usual bustle. This is the kind of hush that suggests someone important might show up and find fault in everything, including the crooked painting in the hall and the missing knob on the parlor door. Madam writes in rare form, hair pulled tight, voice clipped to razor precision, and a dress that doesn't so much flow as command space. She points at dust with the authority of a general choosing troops to send into battle. "There," she says, gesturing toward a faded rug, "and polish the mirror. I want to see heaven in it." You mop. You dust. You carry a bucket of lukewarm water up and down the stairs until your arms feel like overcooked noodles. The house sparkles not because it wants to, but because it fears her fury. By noon, the mystery is solved. A city inspector, not a policeman, worse, a bureaucrat. He arrives wearing a top hat too tall for his stature, which only emphasizes his own sense of importance. He carries a clipboard and a pair of spectacles that keep sliding down his nose as he peers into rooms like he's judging the curtain's moral fiber. Historians still argue whether these inspections were meant to improve public health or merely reinforce Victorian moral hypocrisy. In practice, they're a mix of paperwork, awkward questions, and a bribe slipped into a coat pocket when no one's looking. You stand by your bed while he checks the sheets, notes the position of the wash basin, and clears his throat a lot. He asks if you've been seen by a doctor. You nod. He doesn't ask for a name, just makes a check mark and moves on. Later, you overhear Madam Wright saying, "He'll be back in a fortnight. Next time, we'll have to grease both hands." Clara snorts. "Next time, I'm leaving a beetle in his teacup." The rest of the day unspools in little threads, some laughter, some laundry, and the brief joy of stealing a piece of sugared bread from the kitchen while no one's looking. The bread is dry but sweet, and you eat it by the back door, watching the street boys toss a ball made of rags and old string. You wonder, briefly, if one of them might be your brother. If your mother's still waiting for a letter. If the cat by the fire has a better idea of your future than you do. Then Bessie appears with a corset dangling like a threat and says, "Time to dress." Tonight, your assigned color is saffron. The dress smells faintly of lavender and coal smoke. The satin is frayed at the sleeves, but under dim lighting, it shimmers like something magical. You add earrings, cheap brass painted gold, and pin your curls into place as best you can. Madam Wright does one final inspection before the doors open. She nods once at you, which is practically a standing ovation by her standards. The first client of the evening is new. Younger, nervous, he fidgets with his cuffs and says he's only here for a talk. You smile, offer tea, and listen as he describes his upcoming journey to India. You nod politely, even though your entire understanding of India is that it's far, warm, and full of things Queen Victoria thinks she owns. He leaves without touching your hand, just thanks you and presses a coin into your palm. Later, you discover he gave you a whole crown. That's 5 shillings, enough to buy 2 warm dinners, and still have change for a penny dreadful. You slip it into your drawer beside the faded daffodil. As the hours drift on, the house fills with murmurs and soft footsteps. Upstairs, floorboards creak with familiar rhythm. Downstairs, Clara plays a slow waltz on a wheezing pianoforte someone abandoned in 1847. It's off-key. No one minds. The mirror in the hallway now gleams, catching your reflection as you pass. You don't pause to admire it, not tonight. You're too tired. Your face feels like it's borrowed. Your shoes feel like punishment. Back in your room, you unpin your hair, shake loose the corset, and stretch your arms wide until your joints pop like old wood. Your body is yours again, sort of. You light the candle, settle under the scratchy blanket, and try not to think about the inspector, or the boy with the clipboard, or how easily secrets slip into silence in this house. The daffodil's petals are brown now, curled like sleeping hands. You turn your face to the wall and close your eyes. You dream of bells, soft, distant, echoing down cobbled alleys. When you wake, you realize it's the baker's cart rolling by outside, wheels squealing like they're protesting their existence. The sky is a soft blue-gray, and the chill in your room suggests the sun hasn't yet mustered the strength to shine. You stretch slowly, muscles stiff from yesterday's corset, and the long hours of pretending not to notice things. You count to 10 before rising, just long enough to convince yourself you've slept. Downstairs, the scent of weak tea and scorched toast greets you like a low-effort but reliable friend. Clara is already seated, hair braided back, sipping from a mug that might once have been white. She looks up. "Your boy left a note," she says, sliding an envelope across the table. It's not your boy, but you take the envelope. The note is short. "Thank you for the kindness," it says, signed in the trembling scrawl of someone raised to believe thank yous fix everything. You fold it, tuck it under the daffodil stem, and say nothing. You spend the morning darning stockings, not because anyone asked you to, but because your fingers need something to do. Idle hands in this house are usually occupied by Madame Wright's errands, or worse, her stories. She appears precisely at 9:30, wearing a hat that looks like it mugged a birdcage. She's in good spirits today. Someone's husband apparently sent flowers, which means everyone benefits. The bouquet is enormous, fragrant, and inexplicably full of baby's breath. Bessie sneezes 3 times and declares she's allergic to generosity. Later that afternoon, you and Mary accompany Madame Wright on a walk. Not far, just to the seamstress's shop and back, but it feels like an expedition. You step out into the city wrapped in layers of shawls and suspicion, boots clicking against the damp pavement. Victorian London is a study in contradictions. Grand buildings that smell of horse, sweat, towering churches beside soot-streaked chimneys, carriages rattling past beggars with hands outstretched like hollow cups. You pass a lamplighter on his ladder, trimming the wick and muttering to himself in a rhythm that sounds like prayer. A paperboy hawks the latest scandal, something about a nobleman and an opera singer. Madame Wright pretends not to listen, but buys a copy anyway. At the seamstress's, you're fitted for a new bodice, or rather, a second-hand one altered to almost fit. The woman who runs the place is half blind and all business. She pokes your ribs twice, declares your waist manageable, and begins muttering measurements to her assistant, who's about 12 and looks like he hasn't blinked since breakfast. Back at the house, Clara has organized a footbath for everyone, a rare luxury. You sit with your feet in lukewarm water that smells faintly of eucalyptus and relief. Mary reads poetry aloud in her soft, syrupy voice. You don't know what the poem means, but it makes you feel like maybe something once mattered. Dinner is a stew that's mostly parsnips. Someone finds a bone and declares it treasure. You laugh until your side aches, and for a moment, it feels like you're not in a brothel, but some kind of strange boarding school for the mildly doomed. Afterward, you go to your room and rearrange your drawer. The note, the daffodil, the silver coin, all placed carefully beside one another. Not in any real order, but enough to suggest one. The night's appointments begin with a man who smells of lemons and speaks in half-formed rhymes. He gives you a ribbon from his coat and tells you it matches your eyes. It doesn't. Still, you tie it in your hair anyway, for the show. Later, you meet someone who doesn't speak at all. He just sits with you by the fire, sipping tea, looking at the flames like they might speak instead. After he leaves, you poke the coals with an iron rod and wonder what it would feel like to vanish so quietly. As midnight nears, the girls begin returning to their rooms. Shoes scuff the floor, corsets loosen with shared sighs, and the gaslights are dimmed to a whisper. The house exhales. You sit by the small window in your room, watching fog settle along the rooftops. The moon hides behind a veil of cloud. Somewhere, Someone is singing in the distance, a lullaby maybe, or a warning. You pull your shawl tighter and rest your chin on your knees. There's no grand moment, no revelation, just a quiet stretch of time where you exist tired, hollowed, alive. Morning blinks into being with a sputtering cough from the chimney and the creak of someone descending the stairs too quickly. You pull the blanket tighter for one last moment of warmth, but the day waits for no one, not even a brothel girl with sore feet and a sour throat. Down in the dining room, Clara is already halfway through her tea, spoon tapping rhythmically against the chipped saucer. She raises an eyebrow without looking up. You missed the drama. Your mind scrambles. Was it police? A fight? A client gone wrong? No one stole anything, she continues, sensing your panic. It's just Bessie's birthday. She's weeping in the pantry about turning 24. You exhale. I thought she was 28. She told a man she was 17 last week, so it's all relative. You find Bessie amid onions and half-polished silver. Her mascara is smudged, and she's holding a crust of bread like it personally betrayed her. You sit with her for a few minutes, say nothing. Sometimes the best comfort is simply a warm body sharing silence. Eventually, she sniffles and mutters, I wanted to be married by now. You nod. To a baker. No, she says, to a lighthouse keeper, far away, somewhere foggy. By mid-morning, the dining table is a chaotic still life. Tea leaves, boot polish, undone hair ribbons, and an ominously large laundry pile. Everyone's in varying stages of preparation or disarray. The girls rotate through the tub upstairs, each emerging pink-cheeked and towel-wrapped, trailing lavender soap, and complaints about the water being too hot, too cold, or suspiciously gritty. Laundry day in a brothel is not glamorous. It's war. Corsets must be scrubbed with stiff brushes, chemises boiled, and stockings carefully examined for runs or tears. You kneel beside a bucket and work soap into the underarm of your favorite blouse, which is only your favorite because it hasn't yet betrayed you with a tear down the seam during a particularly ambitious curtsy. Madam Wright inspects the drying lines like a general reviewing troops. That collar's still stained, she snaps. Use the vinegar trick. You do. It smells like defeat, but the stain fades. Historians still argue whether Victorian brothel workers maintained high standards of hygiene as a necessity, or as a subtle rebellion against how the world viewed them. Either way, you know this much. Your linens are cleaner than your soul, and definitely cleaner than most of the men who pass through the front door. After the worst of the scrubbing is done, you collapse onto the worn settee in the sitting room, fingers prunny and heart oddly light. Clara joins you, towel drying her hair. I dreamed last night I owned a bakery, she says, but only sold bread to poets. No money, just verses. You close your eyes and imagine it, pale loaves wrapped in parchment, stanzas inked onto crusts, customers reciting Byron for buns. It sounds ridiculous. It also sounds better than here. Later, the house enjoys a rare moment of calm. No inspectors, no surprise visitors, and no cracked windows needing urgent repairs. Someone finds a tin of jam. You pass it around like treasure. In the afternoon lull, you write a letter, not to send. There's no address for where it should go, but simply to remember. You write about fog and laundry and the lemon-scented man. You fold it, sigh, and tuck it beside the fading daffodil and the silver crown. That evening, your customer brings chocolates. Real ones, not waxy or bitter or wrapped in deception, but sweet, soft, with a hint of orange zest. You nearly cry when you bite into the first one. He notices, doesn't ask. After he leaves, you sneak one last piece and hide the rest beneath your mattress. Clara will sniff them out by morning, but for now, they're yours. The rest of the night hums quietly, no shouting, no breaking glass, just the usual sounds of shoes on floorboards and polite, practiced laughter. Someone in the parlor sings a lullaby. Someone upstairs weeps softly. You know the tune of both. When it's time to sleep, you undress slowly. The night air slips in through the cracked window, cool against your skin. You lie down and trace patterns in the ceiling with your eyes, imagining stars beyond the plaster. The house settles. A cat meows outside. Somewhere, a carriage clatters by. And in the quiet that follows, your thoughts drift not to escape, not even to hope, but simply to rest. You let the silence fold over you like sheets warmed by candlelight. Hey guys, tonight we return to the low-lit parlor, where the wallpaper peels like old secrets, and the velvet cushions hold 100 whispered stories. It's the middle of the week, which means fewer clients and more time to breathe, or at least pretend to. You wake late. For once, no footsteps on the stairs, no sharp knocks at the door. Just sunlight pressing gently through the lace curtains like it, too, is tired of being harsh. Your hair's a tangled mess. Your breath smells like tea left out overnight. And yet, somehow, the day feels kinder. Clara's humming downstairs, slicing bread in the kitchen. You can hear the dull thunk of the knife hitting the board. You follow the scent like a pilgrim. There's honey today. Someone must have flirted with a grocer, and the bread's only slightly burnt. Bessie shuffles in wearing a robe that might have once been burgundy. She plops into a chair and mutters, I dreamed I married a chimney sweep. Woke up covered in ash. Clara grins. Better than dreaming you married a duke. That one always ends in tears and unpaid rent. You laugh together, quietly. Laughter in the daylight sounds different. Less like armor, more like music. After breakfast, Madam Wright announces a treat. The portrait man is coming. You blink. The what? The daguerreotype fellow, the one with the camera box and the cloth over his head. He's doing discounted sittings today. You're not sure whether to be flattered or terrified. Still, by early afternoon, you're in the sitting room with your best dress, hair pinned back, cheeks slightly rouged. The photographer sets up his equipment with the drama of a stage magician. The box camera looks like it might explode. and the metal plate smells faintly of chemicals and ambition. You're told to sit still, absolutely still. No smiling, just a neutral, thoughtful expression, as though contemplating empire or embroidery. The exposure takes 30 seconds, which feels like 30 years. When it's done, the photographer pulls the plate from the box, dips it in a mysterious liquid, and proclaims, "There, immortalized." You look at the result. It's haunting. You look older, wiser, like someone who's seen too much, but learned to make tea anyway. You don't hate it. Historians still argue whether brothel portraits were for advertising, for posterity, or for clients with a fondness for melancholy. You suspect it's all three. As evening falls, a surprise arrives. Madame Wright has hired a violinist for the parlor. He's thin as a fence post, dressed all in gray, and plays with the elegance of a man who hasn't eaten well in a month. Still, the music is beautiful, soft, aching, winding its way around you like fog. You sit by the hearth with Clara and Bessie, sipping weak wine and listening. The violinist closes his eyes as he plays, swaying slightly, and the notes feel like rain tapping gently at the edges of your memory. One client tonight is particularly strange. He arrives smelling of cloves and peppermint, asks to sit beside you, and simply talk about clouds. For an hour, you describe the sky, different kinds of gray, how it hangs low before a storm, how it burns gold at dusk. He pays double and leaves without touching your hand. You light a candle in your room and place it beside the portrait. The flickering glow gives the image an eerie life, like it might blink or speak. You wonder if one day someone will find it in a drawer and imagine who you were, whether they'll guess right. The house grows quiet again. You sit cross-legged on the bed, combing your hair slowly, trying to make the tangles gentler than the day. Your fingers brush the old daffodil, still pressed between pages. You trace the edges of the coin, the letter, the chocolate wrapper, tiny relics of softness in a world that asks so much. Outside, the fog is thick. The street lamps are halos in the dark. You think about the violinist, his bow slicing air, his eyes closed, and you wonder what kind of love must be lost to make music sound that sad. You blow out the candle. Darkness falls like velvet, and for once, you sleep without dreaming. The morning begins not with clatter or chatter, but with silence. A rare and almost suspicious stillness, broken only by the occasional distant hoofbeat or the faint wheeze of the fireplace surrendering to the cold. You lie in bed a little longer, cocooned beneath the worn quilt, listening to the house breathe. Eventually, you rise, stretch, and pad softly down the stairs. The girls are still abed, or pretending to be. Madame Wright is nowhere to be seen, and for a few sacred minutes, the kitchen belongs to you. You boil water slowly, watching steam curl like spirits above the kettle, and savor the quiet cup of tea you craft, strong, oversteeped, but somehow perfect. You curl into the window seat with your knees drawn up and a penny dreadful in hand. The cover illustration is ridiculous. a vampire in a waistcoat threatening a swooning maid. But you love it anyway. Inside, the sentences ramble like drunken vicars. The plot twists like a hairpin turn, and you devour every word. Clara stumbles in, rubbing her eyes. Is that the one with the mechanical rat army? You nod without looking up. They invade Westminster. Of course they do. The two of you read in companionable silence. Occasionally, one of you snorts or reads a line aloud for mutual disbelief. By mid-morning, the house stirs. Boots scuff on floorboards. Bessie shrieks upstairs. Someone's used her last ribbon. Life returns, a little softer than usual. Perhaps the weather's to blame. The rain begins in earnest just after breakfast, hammering the roof like a drummer with too many opinions. The rain keeps the usual foot traffic away. No men loitering. No sudden knocks. Just a soft, gray day with nowhere to be. You light the parlor fire and stretch out on the rug. Clara knits something that might become a scarf. Mary plays a haunting tune on the piano, mostly in minor chords. Someone hums. Madam Wright reappears with a tray of seed cakes, dusted with what might be sugar or possibly salt. She doesn't say. You eat two and hope for the best. Later, she assigns chores with her usual flair for dramatic randomness. You're sent to polish the brass fittings in the upstairs hall. It's tedious work, made better by the squeaky cloth and the chance to eavesdrop on the house through thin walls. You hear Bessie practicing her laugh. You hear Mary talking to her doll, a ritual she claims calms her nerves. You hear Clara whispering lyrics to a sailor's song as she mends lace. Back in your room, you write another letter. This one is to no one. Just thoughts poured onto paper, memories of your mother's soup, of the way grass felt under bare feet in June, of the day you saw a balloon rise into the sky and imagined following it. You fold it, tuck it behind the portrait from last week, and feel lighter somehow. As the sky darkens, the rain slows, and with it returns the real world. A client arrives smelling of damp wool and ale. He talks endlessly about a horse race, gesturing wildly, nearly knocking over the candle. You nod politely, imagining the vampire from your story biting his ankle mid-rant. He leaves eventually, none the wiser. Later, you meet a different sort of guest. Quiet, kind. He brings a poem in his coat pocket and asks if you'd like to hear it. You sit across from him in the parlor, firelight flickering, and listen to his soft voice as he stumbles through rhyming couplets about moonlight and regret. Historians still argue whether brothel girls cultivated romantic illusions to survive, or whether small acts of sincerity like this were real enough to matter. You don't know, but you know the poem wasn't terrible, and that counts for something. As night deepens, you gather your little treasures again. The letter, the coin, the chocolate wrapper, now joined by the scribbled poem on crumpled paper. You fall asleep with the penny dreadful open beside you, its villain mid-monologue. Rain taps the windows like a persistent friend, and somewhere between thunder and sleep, you dream of Westminster swarmed by rats in tiny uniforms. Because sometimes the mind chooses nonsense just to feel safe. The sun rises reluctantly, slanting through the windows in narrow streaks like it's too tired to fully commit to the day. You stretch, bones creaking softly, and sit up with a sigh. Your boots are still wet from yesterday's rain. They greet you with a sullen squelch when you slide them on. The floorboards creak under your step, as if warning you, something's coming. Downstairs, the mood is already off. Clara's pacing. Bessie is retying the same ribbon for the third time. Madam Wright isn't humming, never a good sign. Then you hear it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 firm taps. Not the lazy knock of a customer or the familiar rap of the baker's boy. This is official. This is uniformed. This is the inspector. You freeze, half a bite into your toast. Everyone else does too. Stay calm, Madam Wright says, smoothing her dress even as her eyes flick to the hallway mirror. If he's in a good mood, we'll be fine. You gather in the parlor, where the air feels heavier than usual. The inspector enters without waiting to be invited. He's tall, stiff, and smells faintly of mildew and tobacco. He doesn't smile. He never does. He walks slowly, eyes scanning the room like he's counting sins. You lower your gaze. Everyone does. Routine check, he mutters. Routine, he says. Like turning over people's lives and judging their worth with a glance is just another Wednesday chore. He asks about licenses. He asks about health. He asks questions with answers he doesn't really need. He looks at your shoes too long. He picks up a teacup and sets it down without sipping. Clara offers him cake. He declines, but takes a biscuit instead. Historians still argue whether these inspections were more about enforcing health standards or quietly collecting bribes. You suspect both. Madam Wright slips him an envelope as he leaves, her hand steady as stone. After he's gone, the room exhales. Someone starts laughing too loudly. Bessie pretends to faint onto the chaise. You don't even realize your fists were clenched until they ache. You'd think he was the queen herself, Clara mutters, tossing her biscuit into the fire. But the day must go on. You return to your room and try to feel normal. You change the sheets, fluff the pillow, light a fresh candle. You hum a tune under your breath, something about tulips and tarts. The house returns to its rhythm, cautious, but not broken. That evening, a man arrives in a velvet waistcoat with too many buttons. He smells like brandy and recites Latin phrases as if they're jokes. You nod and laugh politely, wondering if he's ever actually been to Rome. He leaves a gold coin, unnecessarily large, on the nightstand. You stare at it like it might turn into something useful, a better life, a second chance, maybe just new boots. Later, you help Clara polish the glass on the front door. It squeaks terribly. She hums while she works. I wish I could just walk out, she says softly. Go anywhere, even if it's just the coast. You'd hate the coast, you reply. Sand gets in everything, she smiles. Still better than inspectors. You nod. Most things are. As the house quiets for the night, you sit at your window and watch the street. The rain has returned, this time softer, more thoughtful. A lamplighter strolls by, stick held high, flame blooming from street to street like sleepy stars. You think about what the inspector saw, how little of your real life fit in that brief inspection. He didn't see the poems under your pillow, or the penny dreadful with the rats. He didn't see Clara's dream of the coast, or the secret way Bessie folds her napkin like it's royal linen. He just saw numbers, names, regulations. But tonight, you see more. You see the glow of the street lamp reflected in the glass. You see the blur of carriages passing, the hush of the hour settling over soot-stained rooftops. You see the quiet persistence of this life, flawed and weary, but somehow still yours. And when you blow out the candle, you do so with the faintest grin, because even though he knocked, the inspector didn't get everything. Not even close. The next morning, the house is filled with the unmistakable scent of boiled laundry, hot water, lye soap, and the slightly singed smell of too much starch. It clings to the walls like an extra layer of wallpaper and seeps into your clothes before you even get dressed. Today is wash day. You trudge down the back stairs with your basket of linens, the wood cold beneath your bare feet. In the scullery, Bessie's already elbow-deep in suds, face set with heroic resignation. Clara is wrangling a corset into submission with the kind of determination usually reserved for tax collectors or wild animals. Laundry is no small feat in this house. There are dozens of garments to wash, some silk, some rough-spun cotton, most bearing the unique perfume of perfume, pipe smoke, and the wrong kind of memories. You set to work scrubbing stockings against a washboard, so worn it squeaks like a guilty mouse. Your knuckles sting from the lye soap. The water's gone cold again, and every time you lean over the bucket, your back creaks like a church pew. By mid-morning, Clara is cursing the petticoats. Bessie is wringing out chemises with grim focus, and you're fighting a losing battle with a lace garter that appears to have fused with someone's wig powder. Madam Wright occasionally drifts through, sipping tea and pretending not to notice that someone has hung a brazier on the fireplace poker. Of course, after the wash comes the mending. Upstairs in the sewing room, really just a drafty corner with 2 rickety chairs and a basket of tangled threads, you attempt to repair a torn chemise, while Bessie tries to replace a missing button with one that almost matches. Almost. The sewing needles are blunt, the light is poor, and the silence is broken only by Clara reading aloud from her penny dreadful between stitches. It's about a vengeful duchess who poisons everyone at her own dinner party. You all agree she has the right idea. Just after lunch, someone discovers lice. Everyone panics. Hairbrushes are confiscated. Combs are boiled. Powder is fetched, the horrible kind that smells like vinegar and despair. You all line up in the hallway for inspection, like nervous schoolchildren awaiting judgment. Historians still argue whether Victorian brothels were truly better maintained than other working-class homes, or if that's just a romantic myth. All you know is that today you're being dusted with gray powder that makes your scalp itch worse than the lice ever did. Once deloused and thoroughly humiliated, you reward yourselves with strong tea and jam on stale bread. Bessie insists hers is strawberry. It's clearly turnip. Later in the day, you take stock of the freshly laundered clothing hanging on makeshift lines across every available beam and hook. Corsets dangle like exhausted bats. Petticoats wave in the breeze like surrender flags. Stockings hang in pairs like tiny defeated ghosts. Somewhere in all the damp linen and soap suds, a small kind of pride blooms. You did this. You scrubbed, stitched, powdered, and hung it all out to dry, and the house, for a moment, smells clean, like lemon and labor, like effort and survival. As night falls, the weather turns sharp again. The wind whistles through the windows, and you double up on shawls. Someone's tried to mend the front door's draft with an old curtain. It flaps like a moody ghost. Every time someone opens it, you settle into the evening slowly, your body aching from the day's work. Clara has borrowed a deck of cards from a client, and you all gather to play a few rounds of something loosely resembling whist. Bessie keeps changing the rules. You suspect she doesn't know them in the first place. There's laughter and yawning, and eventually someone spills tea on the table, which you all agree is a sign the game is over. Before bed, you tiptoe into the parlor. The fire has gone out, but the coals still glow faintly. You lay your hand on the lace-trimmed tablecloth, warm from the day's bustle. The room is quiet. It smells like wood smoke, wax, and lavender powder, and somewhere behind it all the faint hint of boiled laundry. A badge of honor, really. You head upstairs with tired feet, a full heart, and the comforting knowledge that for one fleeting moment, the house is clean. Or cleanish. That counts. The first cough hits you before you're even out of bed. A dry, scratchy little thing, easy to ignore if not for the way it echoes behind your eyes. You bury yourself deeper into the blankets, but your nose is stuffy, your head fuzzy, and your throat feels like you swallowed a teaspoon of soot. Congratulations. You're officially unwell. Unfortunately, being sick in a Victorian brothel is not an invitation to rest. There are no nursemaids, no poultices warmed over a fire by loving hands. There's just Madame Wright knocking on your door with the back of her fingernail and saying, "You up yet?" You croak out something unintelligible. She takes it as a yes. You pull on your shift slowly, every joint protesting, and fumble with your stays. Your fingers feel like cold sausages. In the mirror, your reflection has achieved a ghostly hue somewhere between candle wax and cheese. Clara peers in with a sympathetic wince. "Tea," you nod. She returns with a chipped mug of lukewarm something. It might be tea. It might also be water that looked at a tea leaf once. Still, you sip it gratefully. Madam Wright sees your pale face and declares, "You'll work the sitting room today, less strain," which translates to smile, nod, and pretend your brain isn't swimming while you chat with men about politics you barely remember. You plant yourself on the parlor chaise, cheeks pinched for color, and do your best impression of healthy charm. One gentleman rants about the price of coal. Another asks you if you think dogs have souls. You say yes, mostly because you're too tired to argue. Between visitors, you slump into the corner and close your eyes for 3 glorious minutes before someone coughs, ironically, and you're back at it. Historians still argue whether Victorian working women received any meaningful medical care or simply soldiered on until they couldn't. Here, it's the latter. If you're upright, you're working. By midday, your nose is redder than your lipstick, and your eyes won't stop watering. Madam Wright tosses you a handkerchief that smells faintly of cloves and gin. "Blow your nose quietly," she advises. You do. It sounds like a deflating bagpipe. Clara sneaks you a spoonful of something thick and bitter from her pocket flask. "Cures nothing," she says, "but makes you care less." You thank her with a nod and a sniff. Later, someone offers you a mint. You cry. By evening, you're a rag doll version of yourself, slumped in a chair with a lap full of tissues and a head full of fog. A regular named Mr. Dobbins asks you if you're okay, and you say yes, because it's easier than the truth. He leaves a tip anyway. After supper, you retreat to your room and pile on every blanket you own. Your toes refuse to warm up. Your hands tremble. You stare at the ceiling and contemplate whether your lungs have always felt this tight, or if this is just how dying begins. Someone knocks lightly. It's Clara again, this time with a hot brick wrapped in flannel. "Put it by your feet," she says. And here, she hands you a note. It's a crude drawing of a rat in a bonnet. Underneath, she's written, "Feel better soon, or I'll make soup." You don't want that. You smile despite yourself. You tuck the rat drawing next to your pillow and hug the hot brick like it's an old friend. Somewhere in the house, Bessie is singing softly. Mary is reciting lines from a play. The world moves on, even if you feel stuck in syrup. Sleep comes eventually, dragging itself in on tired feet. You dream of sitting on a beach made entirely of handkerchiefs, sipping broth through a long straw, while Madam Wright critiques your posture. It's not restful exactly, but it's yours. And when the morning comes, you'll try again. The fever breaks sometime before dawn, leaving your skin clammy and your sheets tangled like a shipwreck. You wake with a gasp, throat parched, hair plastered to your forehead. But the ache has dulled. The weight on your chest has lifted. You're not well, exactly, but you're back in the land of the living. Outside, the first blue of morning seeps through the frost-laced window panes. You sit up slowly, limbs stiff, and swing your feet onto the floor. The boards are cold, but you're grateful to feel anything again. Downstairs, the house is unusually quiet. You descend step by creaking step, wrapped in your shawl like a ghost on holiday. The parlor is empty. The hearth glows faintly, last night's fire reduced to warm size of ash. In the kitchen, Clara's curled on a stool, sipping broth from a chipped mug. "You look slightly less dead," she says, eyes crinkling. "Only slightly." She offers you the mug. You take it and drink deeply. It's watery, probably turnip-based, and entirely perfect. Later that morning, Madame Wright assigns you a simple task: help with dressing room upkeep. No men, no pressure, just fabric, powder, and quiet. You sort ribbons by color, hang fresh chemises, shake out feather boas with a theatrical flourish until Bessie begs you to stop. As you work, you notice the little things. Someone's sewn a tiny blue heart into the hem of a petticoat. A pair of shoes has secret initials scratched into the sole. A hairbrush has a daisy pressed between its bristles, dried and delicate. These aren't just tools of the trade, they're fragments of the girls themselves, tucked into the background where no one else looks, and somehow that knowledge steadies you. You take your time. You move slowly. You find peace in the folds of muslin and the scent of rosewater and starch. Around noon, there's a ruckus in the hallway. A surprise visitor, Mrs. Beardsley, the local moral reformer, armed with pamphlets and righteous indignation. She marches into the sitting room like a general into battle, waving leaflets titled Purity, Prayer, and Proper Vocation. You all freeze. She eyes the wallpaper, the tea set, Clara's slightly scandalous neckline. Then she launches into a lecture about fallen women, repentance, and the possibility of respectable employment at a textile factory in the north. You try to nod politely while fighting the urge to sneeze. Historians still argue whether reformers like Mrs. Beardsley were helpful or merely patronizing. You lean toward the latter, especially when she describes salvation as a clean apron and a husband who doesn't drink too much. Bessie, ever the tactician, offers her a slice of cake. Mrs. Beardsley accepts and leaves, pamphlets half distributed, dignity intact. As the door shuts, the entire house erupts into stifled laughter. "She thinks I can sew a straight line," Clara whispers, eyes wide. "You could marry a baker," Bessie adds, "and die of boredom by Christmas." You tuck a pamphlet into the drawer with your other odd keepsakes. One day, you might use it to start a fire. That evening, you light candles around the parlor more than usual. The soft golden glow turns the room honey-colored and warm. Mary plays the piano gently. No songs, just notes drifting into the corners like incense. A gentleman arrives, young, uncertain. His coat is too big for him. His shoes are polished within an inch of their life. He asks if he might simply sit beside you and talk. So you do. He tells you about his mother's lavender garden, about a dog he lost and still dreams of, about the way silence makes his ears ring. You don't say much, just nod, just listen. It's oddly lovely. Later, after he's gone, Clara gives you a look. "You're glowing," she says. "No," you say, "that's just fever residue." She laughs and throws a cushion at your head. In your room, you write another letter. This one you sign. No recipient, just your name, tucked neatly into the folds of your own story. You place it in your drawer, next to the pamphlet, next to the rat drawing, next to the lace scrap with the stitched heart. The drawer closes with a quiet click. The house settles. The candles burn low. And you, still not well, but whole again, slip into bed with the blanket pulled tight, your eyes fluttering shut as the wind hums softly through the window crack. You're here. You're still here. And that tonight is enough. It's Sunday. You wake to the scent of coal smoke and wet stone, the muffled toll of church bells echoing down the narrow lanes. Outside, the cobbles glisten from a light drizzle, and the gutters run slow with yesterday's soot. In the brothel, Sunday means two things: fewer clients and slightly cleaner stockings. It's also the one day you might wear a hat simply for show. And yours is perched proudly on the dresser. Black straw, a velvet ribbon, and just enough fake cherries to imply moral respectability. Downstairs, the girls are fussing with gloves and lace cuffs, applying just enough powder to look innocent, but not so much that Madame Wright complains about the expense. Even she wears a modest brooch today, shaped like a forget-me-not. After a breakfast of tea and toast too thin to properly chew, you all gather at the front door. There's always an odd hush to this ritual. It's not about faith, not entirely. It's about being seen, being part of something, walking down the street and blending in for once. So you go, past the bakery, where the buns always smell sweeter on Sundays, past the drunk asleep beside the lamppost, who mumbles a hymn in his sleep, past the butcher, scrubbing his apron with a guilty look. The church is tall and gray, its spire slicing through the mist. Inside, it's warm and dim and full of whispers. Candles flicker in sconces. The organ wheezes through a hymn. The pews creak under shifting weight and whispered prayers. You slide into your usual place, back left corner, beneath the window that never quite closes. The vicar nods in your direction with the practiced blankness of a man who has recognized too many faces in too many parlors. Clara nudges you when the offering plate comes by. "Give him your cold," she murmurs. You suppress a laugh. The sermon is about mercy. You try to listen. You really do. But your mind drifts to your childhood, to a field of poppies, to that boy from Thursday night who tipped you in stamps and smelled like cloves. You wonder if God minds. Historians still argue whether church-going among fallen women was an act of repentance, a social performance, or simply routine. For you, it's all three, and the organ is oddly soothing, like a mother's sigh through a wall. After service, you walk home slowly. The streets are hushed, muffled by wet air. A carriage splashes by, the horse looking just as tired as you. Somewhere, someone's roasting chestnuts. The smoke curls like a question mark. Back at the house, you remove your hat carefully. It goes back on the dresser, cherries intact. Clara's already half out of her gown, grumbling about corset creases. Bessie's gone straight to the kitchen for more toast. Later that afternoon, a regular arrives. He has a bruise on his cheekbone and a bandaged knuckle. He asks for Mary. She agrees, silently. You see her later, sitting on the windowsill with a cup of tea. Her lips split. She says she walked into a door. You know she didn't. In the brothel, bruises are spoken of the same way weather is, with shrugs, with forecasts, with the silent hope that tomorrow might be clearer. You offer her a boiled sweet. She takes it. You sit beside her until the sun begins to slip behind the rooftops, casting the city in honeyed dusk. Evening comes with its usual rhythm. Candles lit, perfume dabbed, clients returned, but there's something softer to the air, as if Sunday has left a residue of stillness behind. You change into your evening dress, navy blue with a lace collar. Modest by house standards, you brush your hair until it shines, reapply your rouge, and whisper a little prayer into the mirror. Not for redemption, just for peace. In the parlor, someone starts to hum. The same hymn from this morning. You hum along under your breath, and for a moment, it feels like the walls are thinner, the ceiling higher, the night not quite so heavy. And when you lie down hours later, your stockings folded, your hat safe, your heart worn but beating, Sunday still lingers in your bones like warmth from a candle long since snuffed. The letter arrives on a Thursday, folded in thirds, sealed with wax the color of overripe apples, and tucked under your pillow with unnerving precision. No one saw who delivered it. No one admits to touching it. You recognize the handwriting immediately. Your sister. You stare at the envelope for a long moment, afraid to open it. Not because of what it might say, but because of what it might not. The silence between letters stretches longer with each month. And now, it sits in your hands like a secret too big to unfold. Eventually, you break the seal. It smells faintly of lavender. You read slowly, like you're trying not to startle the words. She writes about the weather, how the frost turned the fields white as lace, about father's leg, still stiff, about the neighbor's goose who wandered into the garden and refused to leave, and she asks how you're doing at the dressmaker's. That lie again. You told her you work with fine fabrics, taking measurements, sewing hems. A respectable trade, close enough to the truth to be believable, far enough to keep her innocence intact. You want to write back and say, I haven't held a needle in months. I take measurements, yes, but not of sleeves. The fabric I work with stains. The seams don't always hold, but you don't. Instead, you fold the letter carefully and place it in your drawer beside the others, beneath the pamphlet, beside the drawing of the rat in a bonnet, next to the dried daisy. Historians still argue whether women in the trade maintained family ties or severed them out of shame. Some became ghosts to their kin. Others sent money anonymously, letting silence buy forgiveness. You think of your sister's last line, I hope you're warm. And for a moment, you are. That afternoon, it rains. The sky drapes itself in ash-gray clouds, and the gutters hiss with runoff. No clients come. The city feels paused, like a breath held too long. You sit by the fire with Clara, threading beads onto a bit of ribbon. Neither of you speaks. The rain drums a lullaby on the roof. Later, you find yourself at the writing desk. The ink is thick, the nib scratchy. Your hand trembles, but the words come anyway. You tell her about the new boots you bought, about the girl who sings in the evenings, about the cat that's adopted the brothel as its kingdom. You don't tell her everything, just enough. You sign it with love always, and you mean it. The letter won't go in the post. You'll tuck it in the drawer with the rest, your private archive of half-truths and quiet love. In the evening, you light a single candle. The flame flickers in the draft, casting your shadow long and crooked against the wall. You read the letter one more time, lips moving silently. And when you're done, you press it to your chest, close your eyes, and listen to the wind outside. It sounds like home, even in this house, where laughter is armor and perfume masks everything. You carry her words like a locket beneath your ribs. Tomorrow, there will be corsets to mend, clients to entertain, tea to reheat, but tonight, you are just a sister, breathing in the memory of lavender fields and geese that won't behave. And for once, sleep comes quickly. Snow falls overnight. You wake to a soft, muffled world, the kind where footsteps vanish and time seems to slow. The window pane is etched with frost, curling like lace. And outside, the rooftops wear hats of white. Even the city seems quieter. The usual clang of hooves and street hawkers is dulled, blanketed by the hush of winter. In the brothel, everything feels slower. The fire is already lit, and the scent of cinnamon drifts from the kitchen. Someone, probably Clara, has managed to talk the baker into giving up a few sticky buns in exchange for a wink and a scandalous wink more. You eat yours in silence, watching the snow pile up on the ledge. It's rare, this piece. No clients yet. No rush to rouge your cheeks or polish your shoes. Just the ticking of the clock and the sound of Bessie humming as she mends a fraying hem. You wander through the house like a ghost in woolen slippers. Each room holds its own story. Clara's scarves draped like ivy, Mary's hair, ribbons fluttering on her wall hooks, a cracked mirror that reflects more truth than it ought. Upstairs, the attic window offers the best view. You climb up, careful not to wake the sleeping cat curled beneath the stair. The city below stretches out, rooftops like icing, smoke rising from chimneys like sleepy sighs. You press your forehead to the cold glass and let the quiet seep in. Historians still argue whether women like you found beauty in days like these. If the work dulled their senses, or if quiet moments made it sharper, you'd argue the latter. Even in a life built around performance, truth finds its way in through the smallest cracks. You think of everything you've hidden in your drawer, the rat drawing, the dried daisy, the false letters, the real ones. You think of your sister's last words, of Clara's hot bricks, of Mary's bruises. You are not untouched by this place, but you are not only it either. That evening, a client asks if you'll read to him, an old man, soft-spoken, who doesn't remove his gloves. You choose a book from the shelf, a collection of poetry long out of fashion, and read until your voice turns into a whisper. He falls asleep sitting up, and you don't wake him. Instead, you sip your tea and let your gaze drift to the fireplace. The logs crackle, throwing gold onto the floorboards. Outside, the snow keeps falling, slower now. When he finally wakes, he thanks you, leaves more than he owes, walks out without a word. You tidy the parlor, douse the candles, draw the curtains. Back in your room, you sit by your drawer and open it slowly. You read one of your unsent letters, the ink faded slightly. Then another. Each one holds a version of you. The girl you were, the woman you're becoming, the sister you wish you could show more. You add one more note. Nothing grand, just a line. I'm still here. You fold it neatly and tuck it with the others. And then, as the fire dies down and the wind moans through the chimney like a tired ghost, you climb into bed. The blanket is heavy, the kind that remembers your shape. The pillow smells like lavender and candle wax. Your limbs sink, your breath slows. The city sleeps, and so do you.